A pleasant day to everyone. I'm Hershane J. Delfin.
I am Kate Lowy L. Guzman.
I am Mary Ann Datugan.
And I'm Alyanah de la Cruz, first year from CLSU, Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Science. Today, we are going to discuss the global culture and cultural flows.
The objective of this topic is to identify and to learn the three main perspectives of global culture. Culture tends to flow comparatively easily throughout the world. That flow is increasingly easy because culture exists in increasingly in digitized form. The internet permits global downloading and sharing of digitized culture forms such as movies, videos, musics, books, newspaper, and photos and so on. Before understanding the global culture and cultural flows, we have to understand the three theories: the cultural differentialism, cultural hybridization, and cultural convergence.
Are you familiar with kaleidoscope? Ang nakikita niyo sa screen niyo is an example of kaleidoscope. Well, kaleidoscope is constantly changing pattern. Usually, kaleidoscope is a tube instrument wherein you will see it like telescope. And then inside of it, meron itong colorful na pattern na nagre-reflect to each other. At ito ang nag-create ng parang effect. And that effect is also called kaleidoscope. Somewhat, kaleidoscope and culture is related to each other. Bakit po sila naging related? Ano po yung pagkakapareha nilang dalawa? First, is kaleidoscope is dynamic. Kapag tinignan natin ito, walang definite pattern ang mabubuo. Iba-iba ang pattern na makikita natin sa telescope na iyon. Similar yan sa culture. One of aspect of culture is being dynamic, means it's changed over time or it can be gradually. Secondly is the pattern you will see in that particular telescope. Also, similar with culture, in culture we have different patterns that we can observe, and this pattern have a particular identity. And lastly, is transmitted. Because of reflection inside the telescope, there will be a transmission of different images to our brain, specifically to our optic nerves. Also, similar with culture, there should be a transmission of shared ideas or information and concept from one person to another person, or from one generation to the next generation. Ang kultura ay iba-iba, at dahil sa pagkakaiba-iba ng kultura, ito ay nagkakaroon ng iba't ibang uniqueness level, at ito ay nagbibigay ng identity at ng kulay doon sa kultura na yon. Kaya dito sa picture na makikita sa screen is a color spectrum para maipakita na ang kultura ay iba-iba at unique sa isa't isa. Ngayon na nalaman natin na ang kultura ay iba-iba, let's tackle the lesson about cultural differentialism. Cultural differentialism. Cultures tend to remain stubbornly different from one another. It involves barriers that prevent flows that serve to make cultures more alike. It is lasting differences among and between cultures largely unaffected by globalization or any other bi, inter, multi, and transcultural processes and flows. This is not to say that culture is unaffected by any of these processes, especially globalization, but it is to say that at their core, they are largely unaffected by them. They remain much as they always have been. The interaction of cultures is deemed to contain the potential for catastrophic collision. Well, catastrophic means causing sudden great damage or destruction. Collision means the sudden forceful coming together in direct contact of two objects or person. Cultural differentialism is more threatening because it indicates the possibility of damage and collision between at least some of the world's culture. The most famous and controversial example of cultural differentialism is Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations. Civilization, according to Huntington, are cultural entities differentiated from each other by history, language, cultural traditions, and most importantly, religion. Huntington traces the beginnings of the current world situation to the end of the Cold War and the reconfiguring of the world from one differentiated on a political economic basis to one based on cultural differences. Huntington's main thesis argues that the most important distinctions among people are no longer ideological, political, or economic. They are cultural. New patterns of conflict will occur along the boundaries of different cultures, and patterns of cohesion will be found within the cultural boundaries. Huntington differentiates 8 world civilization. Number 1, Scenic, the common culture of China and Chinese communities in Southeast Asia. It includes Vietnam and Korea. Number 2, Japanese. Japanese culture as distinctively different from the rest of Asia. Number 3, Hindu, identified as the core Indian civilization. Number 4, Islamic, originating on Arabian Peninsula, spread across North Africa, Iberian Peninsula, and Central Asia. Arab, Turkic, Persian, and Malay are among the many distinct subdivisions within Islam. Number 5, Orthodox, centered in Russia, separate from Western Christendom. Number 6, Western, centered in Europe and North America. Number 7, Latin American, Central and South American countries with the past of corporatist authoritarian culture. Majority of countries are of a Catholic majority. Number 8, Africa. While the continent lacks a sense of Pan-African identity, Huntington claims that Africans are also increasingly developing a sense of African identity. This is significant because civilizations are among the most enduring of human associations. Although they do change over time and are the broadest level of cultural identity, short of humanity in its entirety, and are the broadest source of subjective self-identification, and usually span more than one nation-state. Although they do not perform state functions and are a totality and are closely aligned with both religion and race. Civilization is the broadest level of culture and cultural identities. The process of globalization, considered as involving the spread of religion closely related to civilizations, could be said to be more than 2,000 years old. The growth of major world religions such as Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, and Judaism, as is also the fact they involve global flows as well as the processes through which they adapt to other flows. Islam was born on Arabian Peninsula by Muhammad during the 7th century. It contains universalistic ideas such as God-given standards that led everyone to search for goodness. First of world's great religious civilization to understand itself as one religion among others. They only view as only one God. Hinduism, a major religious and cultural tradition of Indian subcontinent, comprising a diverse family of devotional peoples originating from India, including the caste system. Generally thought of as religion, even though it lacks many of the characteristics of a religion, such as a founder and essential set of fundamentals of belief and practice, or a church. It is spread by moth migrants and itinerant religious teachers, and while it is heavily concentrated geographically, Hinduism has been important as part of the easternizations of the world. For example, the spread of yoga and meditation. Buddhism. Between 230 to 500 million Buddhists worldwide today, but the vast majority are in Asia. Buddhism has spread throughout the world in several ways. however, has been declining in Japan. Though Japanese tend to rely on Buddhism for funeral while taking things from other religions such as Christianity and Shintoism for other events like weddings. The significance of this is that although this is a religion that has spread worldwide, if Japanese Buddhism doesn't do something now, it will die out completely. Christianity. About 2 billion followers, one of the fastest growing religions in the world today. The other is Islam. Christianity spread through the Middle East following the death of Christ, grew and spread into the Roman Empire. Important contributor to Rome's latter decline and fall. The Crusade during the Middle Ages, major events in history and of globalization. The significance of this is that the Crusades during the Middle Ages were a major event in history and globalization and continue to grow and spread. Judaism, one of the smallest of the world's religions, only about 13 million people in the world right now. Importance of Judaism both historically and contemporaneously has been far greater than one would expect looking at the numbers involved. By the late 19th century, there were 12 million Jews in the world, who as a result of diaspora had migrated from the Middle East and continued to spread in small enclaves throughout much of the world. The significance is that there were large number of Jews in Europe, with migrations to the US and Israel during this time period. By World War II, Jews numbered about 16 million. Holocaust led to a reduction of the Jewish population to about 10 million. Founding of Israel in 1948 marked an important turning point of Jews, mostly Jewish population there today. And that's all about our topic about cultural differentialism, which include the civilization and religion. I hope you guys will learn with this lesson.
Cultural hybridization. Cultural hybridization emphasizes the mixing of cultures as a result of globalization and the production of unique combinations. Hybridization also refers to external flows interacting with internal flows, producing a unique cultural hybrid that combines their elements. Hybridization also have glocalization. Glocalization is the interpenetration of the global and the local, resulting in unique outcomes in different geographic areas. Globalization theory sees individuals and local groups as important agents. A cultural hybrid involves the combination of two or more elements from different cultures and or parts of the world. Example is American eating Chinese tacos, Filipino pizza, and etc. Another example are Mexican women watching Korean pop songs performed by a Danish band at a London club owned by a Filipino. Brazilian tourists visiting New York to watch Italian men engage in Thai boxing. Cultural hybridization also have creolization. Creolization is the combination of languages and culture previously unintelligible to one another. The term Creole generally refers to people of mixed.
Now, let's talk about cultural convergence. It is based on the idea that globalization tends to lead to increasing sameness throughout the world. The cultures of the world are seen as growing increasingly similar, at least to some degree and in some ways. There is tendency to see global assimilation in the direction of dominant groups and the societies in the world. Cultural imperialism. This idea indicates that one or more cultures are imposing themselves, more or less consciously, on other cultures, thereby destroying local culture in whole or more likely in part. Multinational corporations such as Starbucks, McDonald's, Disney, Gap, and Apple spread not only their products but also the values embedded within them. Deterritorialization. It foregrounds that idea that in a globalized world, Many social activities and exchanges can take place without geography functioning as a constraint. The internet is a classic example of deterritorialization technology, allowing people to communicate in real time with other individuals and groups around the world via text, audio, and video. Deterritorialization also means that people, services, and goods are available to each other across the globe through a variety of means and an increasing intermediate ways. Example, Apple's iPhone designed in Cupertino, California, but mass-produced in Changshu, China, ordered through call center from an agent based on Mumbai, India. Now, the world culture. It is spread of global models leading to global convergence. Isomorphism is a series of global models that led to great uniformity throughout the world.
Now, as I continue the discussion, let's move on to the next topic, which is McDonaldization. So what is McDonaldization? McDonaldization is a globalization force that is a process by which fast food restaurants are coming to dominate more and more sectors of American society as well as the rest of the world. The nature of the McDonaldization process may be delineated by outlining its 5 basic dimensions: the efficiency, calculability, predictability, and control through the substitution of technology for people, and the irrationality of rationality. But first, let's discuss about efficiency. Efficiency are social norms for both workers and consumers. This means reaching a specific end rapidly with the least amount of cost or effort. The idea of efficiency is specific to the interests of the industry or business, but is typically advertised as a benefit to the customer. A McDonaldization society emphasizes the effort to discover the best possible means to whatever end is desired. Workers in fast food restaurants clearly must work efficiently. Second one is calculability. A great importance is given to calculability that emphasizes quantity and often to the detriment of quality. It involves things that can be calculated, counted, or quantified. This leads to a sense that quality is equal to certain, usually large quantities of things. The various aspects of the work employees at fast food restaurants are timed. Predictability. It also involves an emphasis on predictability, meaning that the things like products, settings, employees, and customer behavior are pretty much the same from one geographic setting to another. This is to attempt to structure our environment so that surprise and differentness do not encroach upon our sensibilities. Rational people need to know what to expect. They want to be sure of the fun, satisfaction, taste, and benefit they received. Number 4 is control. Great control exists in McDonaldized systems, and a good deal of that control comes from technologies. The great source of uncertainty and unpredictability in rationalizing systems are people, either the people who work within those systems or the people who are served by them. This means that the skills and capabilities of the human actors are quickly becoming things of the past. Who we are and how we interact are becoming defined by our dependence upon and subordination to the machine. Number 5 is irrationality of rationality. Finally, both employees and customers suffer from this, which seems inevitable to accompany McDonaldization. Most specifically, this is an unreasonable system. They deny basic humanity, the human reasons of the people who work within or are served by them. And as this system expands and develops interdependencies amongst themselves, both nationally and internationally, the possibility of a small number of individuals exercising tremendous control over the people dependent upon the system becomes increasingly realistic. Despite of dimensions, we can be able to see some of the advantages of McDonaldization. And this is the following. First, McDonaldized systems offer comfort and stability in a rapidly changing world. Second, easy to compare competing products which empowers the consumer. Third, some things benefit from a closely regulated and controlled system like weight loss. Fourth, popular things move from culture to culture rapidly. Fifth, wider range of goods and services are available to more people in more places. And lastly, we can get what we want instantly and conveniently.
Globalization. Globalization is defined as the imperialistic ambitions of nation-states, corporations, and organizations and their imposition throughout the world. Their main interest is in seeing their power, influence, and profits grow.
The globalization of nothing. Nothing refers to social forms largely devoid of distinctive content, while something refers to largely full social forms, those rich in distinctive content. A good example of nothing is the shopping malls, which is an empty structure that is replicated around the world. These malls could be filled with an endless array of specific content like local shops, food, and etc. that could vary from one locale in the world to another.
Chain stores throughout the world sell goods that are more or less the same everywhere they are sold. This is an example of the globalization of nothing and of increasing global convergence.
Nothing can be broken down into four subtypes. All of them are largely empty of distinctive content and easily globalized. Number 1, non-places or settings are largely empty of content. Example, the mall and chain stores, or a local dinner where the patrons are likely to be acquainted. Number 2, non-things are objects largely devoid of distinct content. Example, chain store products and credit cards, where there is a little to distinguish one from the hundreds of millions of others and which work in exactly the same way for all who use them.
Globalization as nothing or non-people are those who occupy a position that leads them to be devoid of distinct content, at least in those positions. Examples are telemarketers, who may be virtually anywhere in the world, who interact with customers in much the same ways, relying heavily on scripts. While the non-services are services largely devoid of distinctive content such as those provided by ATMs. The services provided are identical. The customers does all the work involved in obtaining the services, as opposed to human bank tellers.
Before we end this discussion, I would like to give a brief summary on this topic. First is the cultural differentialism. It involves barriers that prevent flows that serve to make alike. Cultures tend to remain stubbornly different from one another. Second one is cultural hybridization. It is the mixing of culture and integration of the local and leading to unique combinations. And last, the cultural convergence is when culture is subject to many of the same global flows and tend to grow more alike.